Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo! This week we continue our trip down Chesapeake Bay, where we stay for a couple of days in the Solomons in Back Creek, and there we test out the washer and dryer for the first time at anchor. From there we move on to Mill Creek, where we actually experience a little bit of very worrying engine issues, and after Mill Creek we head on down to Hampton and we conclude our trip down Chesapeake Bay. Unlike last week, this week's weather was not so cooperative, but we made it work. Alright, I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. When we left off last week, we were headed to the Solomons in Maryland, and that's roughly halfway down Chesapeake Bay. And the Solomons is a really nice place. There are nice protected anchorages. We were going to go up Back Creek and anchor for a couple of days to wait out high winds and rain in Chesapeake Bay. Since we had a couple of days of downtime in the Solomons, I decided to go ahead and test the washer and dryer for the first time at anchor. And I discovered something really neat about this washing machine. When I tested the machine on land, I wasn't babysitting it, I was just letting it go through its cycles. And what I discovered was, if you don't babysit it, if you let it do its wash cycle, it fills up, and if you select a small load, it's about 10 gallons of water. If you do a medium load, it's around 15 gallons of water. And if you do a large load, it's around 20 gallons of water to fill the drum. And if you monitor the wash, when it's done with its wash cycle, it goes into a spin, and if you stop it right before it goes into that spin cycle, and you can separate all the clothes and make sure the wash or the load is evenly balanced, it'll spin really well. And then instead of filling the drum entirely again for a rinse cycle, it'll actually just spray a little bit of water on the clothes around the outside of the drum that just spun down, and then it'll spin them again, and then the wash cycle is done. So it's a really efficient rinsing method. If you don't separate the load and the load is uneven, and it starts banging against the side when it goes into that spin after the wash, then it will fill the drum entirely with water for the rinse cycle. So with just a little bit of babysitting, I can actually double the amount of loads that I'd be able to do with our water tanks, which was pretty neat to discover. After a couple of days in the Solomons, the high wind and rain had passed, and we decided to get back on the road. And this is when we started having a couple of things go wrong. As we were leaving Back Creek and going through the Solomons, it was weird. I was having an issue getting my AIS to connect to our navigation program, Navionics. It just wasn't registering. So I went into the Wi-Fi and I saw that it wouldn't connect. It kept saying the password was wrong, which was kind of impossible because I had put in one password and it was stored, so I didn't know what was going on. So once we passed through all of the marinas and stuff in Back Creek, and that took about 45 minutes, but we knew where the buoys were, so we could navigate that safely. And as soon as we got out in the Pax River, I went down and I grabbed the owner's manual for the AIS system just to see what the password was, because I had no idea what it was, and it's in there, so I found it. I re-entered the password and it still wouldn't connect. It said the password was wrong. So at this point I was really confused, and I just went down and I powered down the AIS unit. Now this AIS unit has been powered up since the day I installed it, 100% of the time. A lot of people turn their AIS off when they reach an anchorage, which I don't really understand because it's designed so that people know where you are. So at night, I leave my AIS on because I want people to know where I am so they don't hit me. I kind of think that's what it's designed for, but I could be wrong on that. So it's been on 24/7 for, about 2 years now. And I powered it down, powered it back up, and then it connected. So I don't know what went wrong there. It was just a little snafu, but we haven't had any problems with it since. So we got our fingers crossed that that one is solved. We knew from the wind forecast that we were in for a long, rolly day. Our goal was to make it down to Mill Creek, which was 44 miles away, so it was going to be a long day of rolling around, which is not ideal. And the winds were primarily hitting us from behind. We had 1 to 2 foot waves. rolling under us from behind, and as we got closer to the Potomac River, which we had to cross, the winds shifted and they started to hit us closer on our beam as the winds ran straight down the Potomac River. Now the 1 and 2 foot waves, it was a little rolly. I was able to get the head sail out at some points, and that did help stabilize the boat. And through the rudder motion, I could minimize the rolling quite a bit. I got better at it as the day went on. Once we got to the mouth of the Potomac, it's actually about 8 miles wide, the mouth of the Potomac, so it took us almost 2 hours to cross that. And during that time we had 4 foot waves hitting us almost, not quite from the side, from the rear starboard side. So that was very rolly. The waves would roll under us, and actually we only really got rolled once or twice. I got really good at managing the input on the rudder to minimize the rolling. It was a lot of input from side to side as the wave rolled under us, but it kept the boat on a straight course doing that. So even though the conditions were rough, and I felt really good about it, I felt like I learned a lot about handling the boat in those kind of adverse conditions. You know, 4 foot waves are pretty decent size, especially when they're coming every 2 seconds. You know, if you've got 8 or 9 seconds between, they're more rollers than they are waves. So those waves that come in short periods can be challenging. And these were bigger ones for us. We normally don't venture out when, you know, the weather's going to be like that, but we knew it was going to be okay, and it was a good opportunity for me to learn how to handle those conditions. We made it down to Mill Creek, and we only stayed there one night as the weather was favorable the following morning for us to continue down the way to Deltaville. And here's where we ran into the most troubling issue that we've been dealing with, and that was the engine hesitated to start, and it has never ever done that before. And I'll get into that in a little bit. When I got to Deltaville, I had the entire trip. It was a short trip. It was only 23 miles, but I had 4 or 5 hours to think about what had happened starting the engine that morning. And I went through all the permutations that I could think of, and I'm no diesel mechanic by any stretch of the imagination, but from what I know of engines, I just went through what could possibly be wrong, and then I tried to come up with a way to mitigate it in the future, and also a contingency plan in case it happened again. Hey y'all, we just got outside of Deltaville here. We're about 2/3 of the way down Chesapeake Bay, a little bit further, maybe 75% of the way down. But normally we would stay up in Jackson Creek, but it's a little tricky to get in there, not too bad. But it's going to be calm tonight. This is as windy as it's supposed to get, so we'll be protected here well enough. And it'll save us about 20 minutes in the morning getting out of there. So this morning, that's Chesapeake Bay right there. So we are exposed. If the wind was coming this way, you wouldn't want to stay here, that's for sure. But anyway, so this morning when we were leaving Mill Creek, we had a bit of a problem. The engine hesitated to start, which it's never ever done before, and that was very concerning. Now I was able to get the engine started, and I don't think it has anything to do with the engine, because the engine ran all day today to get here. So it wouldn't be a fuel flow issue, it wouldn't be a fuel pump issue, it wouldn't be a compression issue. The only thing I can think of is it sounded like a voltage issue. It sounded like the starter was struggling to turn over. So I checked the voltage on this battery here, this lead acid battery. That is the one that starts the engine and then goes to the DCs, which go to the lithium battery bank, the main bank. And I checked this voltage and it was 13 volts, which is plenty high, but I have no way of monitoring it to see what's going on when the engine is actually turning over. Like if the voltage drops drastically, there might be an issue with the battery. When I got here, I thought maybe the water was too low in the battery, so I did check, and the battery water level is fine. I cleaned the positive terminal. It had a little bit of corrosion on it, but nothing that would really stop the engine from starting. So I'm a little confused about that. And only the engine runs on the lead acid battery, so I can't think that there was anything that would wear or run that battery down. So here's the old system. And this line here is where I used to tie the lithium iron phosphate battery bank to start the motor. Now I moved all of that stuff down when I put in the DC to DC converters. But I still have one line coming over, which is a line that is tied to the lithium iron phosphate bank, and that runs the AIS system. You okay, Weegs? What's going on? You okay, P-Dubs? You want to come in? I think we have a Weegan issue. Hold on one sec. You want to come in, P-Dubs? All right, come on. Who wants to come in? Okay, well, what's going on then? Huh? What's going on then? I don't know. What do you guys relax. Relax just a minute. Relax. Okay, sorry about that. The camera crapped out there for a second. But anyway, so this is a tie to the lithium system. And I've got enough cable here. This is 1/0 cable. I've got some there. And I've got another length of it in here. And this is a switch. I'm going to tie all of the AIS up at the power, where the power is coming in. That way the AIS will always be powered up. And I'm going to turn this switch off. And I'm going to run a line down back in here. Grab the light. And just in case something ever happens where I need to start the engine using the lithium iron phosphate system, I'm going to run a line down, and I've got an extra switch here. It's actually a circuit breaker, 100 amp one, but I'm going to put this back in here somewhere and bury it so it can't accidentally be turned on by anyone, not that anyone would. And then I'm going to tie it into the main engine bus here. That way 2 switches will have to be turned on in order to start the engine using the lithium iron phosphate system. It'll be a good backup. It's basically just a jumper cable coming over here to this system in case we have in case we have issues in the future, or if I ever need a jump, if this lead acid battery goes bad or something. It'll be good to have a second way to start the engine, but I don't want to make it easy so you could accidentally relink the two, because if the lithium iron phosphate battery bank was connected to this system while the engine was running, it would be not the best if the DC to DC converters were running, or actually not running. Okay, I'm thinking through this in real time, because as soon as you start the engine, the alternator is going to start putting out power at too high of a voltage for the lithium iron phosphate battery bank. So what I'll have to do is pull the fuse on the regulator for the alternator, and that'll disable that. I can turn on the 2 switches and disconnect the red here. Then I can safely start the engine using the lithium iron phosphate battery bank, and then I could disconnect those 2 switches after I reconnect this battery, and I guess I wouldn't have to disconnect this battery necessarily to start it, but I would definitely have to disconnect, or what's the word I'm looking for? Disable the alternator. Okay, yeah, anyway, it'll be good. Thinking through it, it's going to be a logistical nightmare if it ever has to happen, but having dual functionality I think will be good in case something like this morning happens again, which I don't know what happened. I mean, I guess it could be a starter, Could be the diesel starter. You know, since I've got here, and normally I leave the DC to DC converters on, and they do run for a little while until this battery gets down to 13.1 volts, then they shut off. Maybe that threshold is too low. I'll have to look at the power distribution curve on a lead acid battery, or its voltage discharge curve, and see where that is. Maybe that's just running this battery down too low. I popped them off immediately today, and it is this is around 14 volts. I just checked it, and I tried starting the engine a few times, and it fired right out, but it's still warm, so that's not too much of a surprise. Maybe I just need to lower that cutoff in the settings. I hope it's something that simple, that I just drew that battery down too low. So I'm going to go check on the voltage discharge chart for a lead acid battery, which I probably should have done before this, but it hasn't been a problem up until now. But you know, going into Mill Creek, I actually tested for the first time all 3 DC to DC converters running at once. So that was out of the ordinary, and I also switched fuel tanks the next morning, but that shouldn't affect anything because the fuel filter is full of fuel and the tanks are gravity feed, so that definitely wouldn't have been it. So maybe it had something to do with having all 3 DC to DC converters running, and it didn't charge this battery enough and they were drained. Yeah, I'll have to look into all that, but something happened which makes me really worry. So I'm going to try and build in a redundancy here and see if I can't figure out what happened. Alrighty, hope y'all are well. Hey y'all, so I got this repaired, and I actually had to switch this stuff down to this switch here. I couldn't, these runs here, I just couldn't make the turn on this switch down here. It was too tight to get up there with a big 1/0 cable. So this is one turn off here, and then ooh, we've got it coming over here, and here is our second turn off. That is off, and I've got it tied in down here. So it is all hooked up. I did test it as far as to being right up here, and there is voltage at this switch, so I know it'll work if it has to, and I'm not going to test this until I actually have to use it, which I know is not necessarily the way you want to do things, but I need to think for a little while about all the stuff that could go wrong by bridging the 2 systems, and what I need to do to, what I need to shut off or disable before I do that. So I did try and start the engine again, and it fired right up. So maybe it was just a one-off thing. I'll have to look. Maybe something is draining this battery overnight, although I don't know why it was at 13 volts, because that's still plenty high. So I don't know. I'll let you know. Hey y'all, sorry if you can't hear me. The wind jenny's going, and I've got the heater still going. Today is a Friday. It's supposed to be calm, but as you can see, I mean, it's not super choppy, but it was supposed to be glass, and it is a little wavy. But the moment of truth, we are going to try and start the diesel this morning and see if we can make it to Hampton, which is about 42 miles away. So fingers crossed that we can, but I didn't bring any of our normal traveling stuff out here because I don't expect it to start. It's illogical that it struggled yesterday, and obviously there's something wrong. I don't know what it is. The only thing I can think of is the glow plugs are maybe going bad. I did try and start it 4 or 5 times yesterday after we stopped here, and it's fired right up every time. I tried one rather later in the evening after the fuel had cooled down, and it started right up. So But obviously overnight the fuel cools even further, so I don't know. Excuse me. I'm hoping it'll start, but I'm not optimistic. So let's see what happens. What do you think, Tunes? Do you think it's gonna start, buddy? Cross your paws, bud. I got my fingers and toes crossed. Yep. Oh, okay. You need some attention, son. Okay. Let's get this operation done. Then we can mess with the kids. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see anything. I'm just going to set this down here while I try this. All right, guys. Cross your fingers and paws, and toes, and everything you've got. Your arms and legs. Okay, let's give it a try. Sanjay Beach. Thank God. I don't know what the problem is, which scares me. I did do a couple things differently. I did shut off the DC to DC converters right away when I got here. So maybe it was a voltage issue all along. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold. Dang. It's been hanging on. But anyway, I've got a lot of preparation to do here before we can get going, and it's going to be a long ass day. So we're going to get at it. What do you think, fish? Should we get at it, buddy? What do you think, tuna fish? Oh yeah, okay. Are you not looking forward to the day, buddy? Are you not looking forward to the day? It'll be calmer than it was the last few days. I promise. Yes, I promise. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. It will be, my son. It will be, yes. All right, guys. Catch you later. It was an absolutely beautiful day all the way down to Hampton, Virginia, where we anchored next to the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel for a few days. And along the way, we did get to see a massive sea turtle, which was awesome, and the engine ran flawlessly. So it was a pretty good end to Chesapeake Bay that had thrown us a couple of curveballs. But all in all, it was one of our better trips through Chesapeake Bay. And that's all we have time for this week. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That doesn't cost you guys anything, but it helps us out more than you'll ever know. And I would love to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I would not make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotton. Thank you guys so very much. I really appreciate it. And I do have one legacy patron member. Her name is Joan Linbo. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she will live on in our hearts forever. We miss you, Joan. Alrighty, I guess that'll do it for this week. I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.